and welcome. Gary Green and I are back again for another filming for you. This is Wednesday, September 2. Not such a bright sunny day. We're still dealing with the smoke, as you all know, but we're glad here to be with you to learn more from Gary and to just make some announcements. The first announcement I do want to make, and we talked about this a little last time, our culture is so based on us meeting up with each other face to face, and it's just been impossible, but we're going to try it. So you'll be getting an invite for an all group meeting by Zoom on September 24. I believe that's a Thursday evening, and we're just creating our lineup now. You'll be hearing more about that in the interim. So Gary, let's get to it. 2 weeks have passed since we were here, and we finished up last time by talking about the flu season. Is there any new update on the flu season locally?
Yeah, so far this year we have not seen any flu activity, and that's been really good. And I'm actually going to show you a graph. The graph I'm going to show you is from UCSF. This is our laboratory graph, and this is a weekly graph that shows us viral activity. You look at a number of different viruses here. So on the left-hand side of this graph, you can see the different type of viruses, and they're in different colors. But if you look to the right of the graph, where I place a couple arrows, the red arrow over the purple bar, that's coronavirus. So that's COVID-19 activity, and it's still very active. But on the panel of viruses, there's only a very tiny amount of rhinovirus, that's the green bar, and just one case of adenovirus. So we're not seeing any influenza A or influenza B activity. So we have not seen the flu season yet. It's not an early flu season, and from the southern hemisphere, we're hoping it's a mild flu season.
So last time I think you recommended that we hold off on vaccines till maybe after October 1st. Does that still stand?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we don't vaccinate before October 1st because we want everyone's immunity to last as long as it can through the influenza season. But this year we have some new stuff. There's some great stuff. This year, for those over 65, we used to have a trivalent influenza high-dose vaccine, and the trivalent vaccine was 2 parts A, 1 part B. Now we have a quadrivalent vaccine. So we have a vaccine that's 2 parts influenza A, 2 parts influenza B, and it's high dose. So this is the perfect vaccine for those over 65 and those who are frail.
Good. I'm going to switch topics. I'm going to bring up a term that I've heard a lot in the popular press. It's called herd immunity. And I've heard it bandied about when they're talking about vaccines, almost offering it as an alternative to vaccines. Can you educate us a little bit about that, please?
Herd immunity, yeah, that's been in the news recently. So HERD, herd immunity. This represents a population's antibody response, protective antibody response, so they won't get infected again. So if everyone gets the measles, or if everyone gets the measles vaccine, you develop herd immunity. Natural infection through herd immunity is what Sweden tried. So Sweden decided to let everyone go to school, go to work, let the virus mix, and what they had a lot of viral activities in Sweden early on, a lot of deaths, their economy struggled, and they never got to the level of infection in the population to develop this protective herd immunity. So we know that herd immunity by natural infection is not the way to go. That's going to result in many more cases, many more deaths, and it's going to stall the economy even more. So the next step is, what about vaccination? Well, I'm going to show you something very interesting. This is a historical slide. This is a slide of the 1918 influenza pandemic. And this data actually comes from Poland, but this is what happened worldwide. The 1918 influenza virus went around the world 3 times in 1 year. And in those 3 times, I think 10% of the world died. And those are represented in the arrows. But look at the circles. The circles represented how influenza A, H1N1 from 1918, went on to become the seasonal influenza for 3 more years. So if you don't have a vaccine, this virus lasted for 4 years. So I think for herd immunity, what we're really going to need is a vaccine. If we have a vaccine, we can hopefully get a handle on this virus within the next year. If we don't have a vaccine or not an effective vaccine, people are not going to develop enough immunity for us to prevent this virus from circulating. So I think that's really fascinating information about viral dynamics, and I think it's going to take a vaccine for us to have enough protection. Now the other thing is, how do you measure protection? Yeah. This kind of overlaps with herd immunity because everyone wants a blood test, a serology test. The blood tests that are available telling us if you have enough IgG, IgM, IgA, or total antibody, those tests tell us about protective and non-protective proteins. So neutralizing antibodies are binding proteins that prevent the viral infection and replication. But a lot of our antibodies are not protective at all. The commercial tests tell us, what antibodies do you have? Do you have them? Do you not have them? It doesn't tell you what kind of antibodies, if they're protective or at the high enough numbers. So again, the serology test doesn't tell you if you're protected. What's really going to be the protection, even if you've had a COVID infection, is going to be vaccine. So I think vaccine's the way to go. There are 3 of them in the pipeline in the US. They're looking very good. We haven't had any negative reports from efficacy or safety yet. And the FDA is going to mandate the vaccines must be at least 50% effective for us to use it. And that's better than our flu vaccine. Sometimes a flu vaccine is 30% effective. Having this vaccine over 50% will be helpful in developing vaccine-related herd immunity.
So if I gather what you're saying right, herd immunity is the concept where you just let people get it after a sufficient number of people get it, let's say 50, 60, 70%, then I can go down and walk down the street because there's so little chance of me getting on the street that I'm going to be immune effectively.
Well, you're going to be less vulnerable.
Less vulnerable.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of trauma to get from where we are now to 50 to 60% infected like you showed with the flu.
That's
so
right.
You need the vaccine to give us a jump start, to get us up to where X percent, 50 or 60% are immune. Then we might be able to take some advantage of that herd immunity down the road.
Right, then schools may go back. Kids may go back to school. Then we may open inside businesses. People can go back to church.
Yeah.
Then that crowding becomes less dangerous. We'll still see a few cases, but we won't see it as prevalent as it is now.
Okay, good. You know, I just wanted to bring up something else. At the conclusion of our last video, Gary and I talked about the fatigue factor, and now in retrospect, we just went through another stressful time with fires. I know that many of you were evacuated. I'm told that none of us lost our homes, which is good, but it's just been more stress and more exhaustion for all of us. But what I want to promote now is to, the question we had talked about earlier is, can we be safe when we're tired and exhausted? And I think we have been, and we are doing that. The tenets of social distancing, washing your hands, wearing a mask, continue to work. There's been some reports of infections at local hospitals, but still here in our foundation, there has not been a nosocomial infection, among our staff, our physicians in our hospital. Sutter Santa Rosa Hospital is in the same light. They're still counting down and saying that they've yet to have a nosocomial infection. So we're doing something right. I just want to say, keep it up. Be safe, everybody. Thanks for your time. Gary, thanks for coming and schooling us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye now.